Cajun coffee.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever this message is reaching you. I have the pleasure to be with Jerod Napier. Awesome, awesome dude. He runs the Rising Ridge. Interesting story. Really loving man. He's one of those dudes that you meet, has a great voice, very boisterous, very commanding presence, but a very gentle soul when it really comes down to. Very knowledgeable on a multitude of different angles. And it was a blessing to be able to meet him back and at his place over in the Ridge. How you doing today, Jerod?
I'm outstanding. I'm outstanding. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, man. I've been looking forward to this interview for the last about a month and a half since I actually met you, man.
Thank you for nailing it down. I deeply appreciate you.
I deeply appreciate you, man. It was just like inviting me to your place and picking me up from the airport. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get murdered or if there's gonna be some healing. Either way, let's just
Hey,
do a full send.
you never know. And I like the duality of it all.
And then you all of a sudden you start picking up a random person at the airport.
My favorite is when I send my wife and my kids to go pick up people for a retreat. And I'm over here getting things ready or mowing or whatever. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna send my wife to come get you, and like my kids are in the back seat, and people pull up and they get their bags in. My son's like, "Hi, how are you? I'm Leif. What's your name?" And people are like, "What kind of retreat is this? They have kids picking me up from the airport. What's going on?"
Oh man, yeah. I know when you picked me up, you're like, "Yo, I put somebody else's bags in the back of my van," and then all of a sudden I'm like, "This isn't Will."
I'm like, dude, this guy doesn't look familiar. Like, I understand, like some people on camera look a little bit different. I was like, but I like, hey, how you doing? And we give each other a nod. Yeah, that'd have been an interesting retreat if he just was like, "Yeah, just I'll come to a retreat. We'll see how it goes."
Oh, he's just like, "Screw it, full send, man." Oh, so Jared, tell me a little bit about you. Where you grew up. What was your life growing up as a kid, and why did you choose
Mm.
the Navy?
Oh man, yeah. Thank you for asking that. So I grew up in North Orlando, um, and my dad was a retired Army major that had three kids. He All of them adopted except the youngest. My sister Rose was the oldest, my brother Mark, and then my brother James. And then my father had retired from the army. He was a career guy. He was an Mustang officer. He was enlisted first and then became an officer. He got his commission in Vietnam. Um, very hard nosed man, from what I've been told. I didn't really get to experience that because he was softer when I was growing up. Um, but my sister was sexually assaulted at the age of 20. And, you know, she was probably getting a lot of pressure to have an abortion at that time. And, she wanted to keep the baby and she wanted to provide a life for it. Unfortunately, she wasn't in a situation to have, the sustainability to raise a child. So I was the product of that sexual assault. I was the baby. And my grandparents adopted me young. So my biological mother and what would have been my uncles turned into my siblings, which, as a kid growing up, like it was nothing to me. I definitely had this deep, strong connection to my sister that I couldn't quite, that I didn't understand when I was young. and it was never hidden from me what was happening, but I just was like, hey, this is just my life. Like, it's okay. And it was. Um, we when I was young, the neighborhood was predominantly white, blue collar individuals. And you know, when I was 10, 11 years old, my dad had a stroke, and he was paralyzed on the left side of his body. And the neighborhood really started to shift. You know, um, all the white families moved out. A lot of Haitian, Puerto Rican families moved in. Um, we didn't have the money to move, and so I just kind of stuck in that neighborhood. And along the way, it kind of turned into um like the token white boy.
Mm.
Like I grew up around a lot of Puerto Rican friends. That was the majority of my friends growing up in that neighborhood. And we clashed quite a bit with the black community there. And it was tough, man. Like I grew up fighting a lot. I grew up feeling not welcome or safe a lot, not belonging. Um, I didn't like I had friends, but I didn't really have like uh a lot of friends. Um, my two best friends growing up, we just kind of kept to ourselves, and smoked a lot of weed, did a lot of hallucinogens, did a lot of drugs, did a lot of fun stuff, sneaking out and as hooligans. And both of my best friends growing up are dead now. Shout out to Eric Millard, Brian Renteria. Um, but it was tough, man. Really trying to find. I didn't really have that strong father masculine presence that I could absorb. My dad was in a wheelchair. He was, still an incredible man, although he was emotional at times because of his stroke. Um, it was hard to find traction towards who I really was. And I wasn't doing well. I wasn't doing well academically. I wasn't making good decisions. I got caught up with the police several times, still fighting. And it was just tough. It was a tough place for a young man to grow up, to figure out a path in life. And my older brother, Mark, called me and said, "Do you want to live with me in Wisconsin?" And this is like the middle of my junior year of high school. And I was like, it's just a choice that I thought about for a moment. And I was like, because I always knew that I wanted to do big things. I always knew that I wanted to get out of there. And I always knew that I could flip a switch if I needed to. Like the bedrock of being a good man was there. The bedrock of being responsible, the bedrock of having integrity was there from my father. I just wouldn't tap into it. And I went to move. I went up north the middle of my junior year in January. I had this like white afro. I was like, it was like the Slim Shady days, right? So like my whole hair was like fried white, and I used to like pick it out, and then I'd get like a fade, and it was fucking awesome. So like I show up to Wisconsin with like a you know this big puffy silver jacket like Diddy used to wear um in his music videos, and I show up looking like a fucking alien to these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Small podunk Wisconsin town. And you know a lot of my conditioning and engine engineering and like how I was kind of made was coming out there. Um, Graduated high school, fell in love there. You know, the whole things that you're supposed to do as you graduate. And I knew I wanted to get out of the house that I was living in as soon as I could. Um, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to college. I never really loved I loved being studious. I loved to learn. I didn't like people telling me what to do. And Navy recruiter came to my brother's house. I went and talked to the army and they were assholes. And I touched base with the Navy recruiter and I felt like they were trying to blow smoke all over me. And I met this other guy who was in the Navy. He was a chief, and he just kind of told me like what the possibilities were and what could happen. And he's like, if you're looking to leave and change your life, this is a good way to do it. So I went and I was like, I'm gonna be a diver, I'm gonna be a SEAL, I'm gonna be all this shit. And I went to MEPS and they were like, you're completely fucking colorblind, dude.
Hmm.
Like, you can't do any of these fucking jobs. I was like, oh, okay. Then I was like, well, then I'll see y'all later. And I wasn't going to join. They're like, well, hold on. You can be a cook, you can be a gunner's mate, or you can be a corpseman. I was like, the fuck is a corpseman? And started reading about a corpsman. And I was like, oh, you work in hospitals and you support doctors and this. I was like, outstanding. Sign me up. So I signed up to be a corpsman, went, and I'm in boot camp, and like 9/11 happens. Right. So I'm like in boot camp and people are freaking the fuck out. And people are like, we're going to war. And I'm like, oh man, like who we going to war with? Like, we don't know. I know as much about 9/11 as I do now as I did in fucking boot camp, 20 some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, cool. And then a day later, like these corpsmen come in, they're like, who all is gonna be corpsmen? Like a couple of us raised our hand, they like pulled us aside. They're like, we need to talk to you guys. Like, we're going to war. You guys are gonna be probably going with the Marines. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, corpsmen go with the Marines all the time. You're like the frontline medics. I was like, hold the fuck on. Nobody told me any of this. Nobody told me about going to frontline combat with the Marines. But slowly the brainwashing started to work. Slowly that child started to get, rinsed from me. And by the time I got to core school, I was on board. Like, fucking send me with the Marines. Got through core school, and my first duty station was at a hospital. Unfortunately, I tried to go with the Marines, and they sent me to a hospital first, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I was able to slip on a deployment where I was able to augment Second Battalion, 6 Marines for a little bit. Came home and got orders to Hawaii, First Battalion, Third Marine Regiment, the infantry battalion out of Hawaii. And we'll just kind of pause there for any questions. But like my childhood growing up was good. Um, However, a lot of the conditioning that had occurred didn't really start to come out as problematic until I was an adult, you know. Um, but I had a fairly adventurous childhood.
Well, you did say before, like you didn't know your bio dad at all, and then when you had your grandfather step into the role of being that father, being that masculine figure, he was not able to be the full dad that you needed. And it makes sense because a lot of the guys I've spoken to on here, and then even in my job, how many of us are actually looking for masculine role models or strong people to look up to? nothing against the women in our life, but there's just that void that men need. And the the thing that I was thinking about while you were talking was, do you think your grandfather or your father, both of them, the same person, had anything to do with your decision about going to be a corpsman?
Be a corpsman? Probably not. Uh, he didn't want. I remember when I was really young, probably a couple years older than Leif, and I, oh man, I'm gonna cry. And Leif has said the same thing to me, and I had something similar to what my dad said. Uh, you know, I said, Dad, I want to join the army too. I want to be a soldier. And my dad just stopped and looked at me. He said, I don't want that for you. I said, why? He says, because the military and the government promises things to you and they don't deliver. And that was like the first time that I remember seeing my dad like posture towards something. My dad was very loving, like somebody that you did not want to fuck with, but he was very, very loving. And I remember his seriousness. Um, and I understand it. um, but I knew that if I was going to reach my potential, that I needed radical discipline
Mm-hmm.
and leadership to like force me to be that, you know? And that's why I joined the military.
Well, it was interesting. So my dad was a Vietnam vet, and when he got injured as an adult, and then he got medically retired from his job, he very much changed. And when I told him, I said, "Dad, I'm joining the Marine Corps," he said, "Oh fuck, no, you're not." And I said, "Dad, I already signed the papers." I said, "Didn't you do that when you were a kid?" And my dad dropped out of school, and he went right to the Navy recruiter and said, "Hey, I'm joining the Navy." And when he told my grandfather was about to beat the living shit out of him. When he said, "Hey, I dropped out of school," he said, "You can't do that. I'm government property." He said, "Well, you better make sure your ass is going to boot camp, otherwise I'm breaking you." Pretty much, in other words. And when I told my dad I was leaving for the Marine, I was going to the Marine Corps, he pretty much broke down and cried. And
Oh,
when I went over to Iraq my first time, my mom would tell me about this. My dad was never religious, and you probably can relate to this too. Is he would pray next to the bed every night because some of the stuff that he endured, he didn't want me to see, and I'm pretty sure your father didn't want you to see the same thing because once we once we do those actions, we can never undo them, and once we see those things, we can never unsee them, and we don't want other people to be haunted by those that imagery. And it's weird. It's like thinking about how our parents tried to protect us, but they weren't able to articulate the words for us to really understand what they were trying to convey.
yeah. Yeah. Not being able to communicate it, not being able to be rawly open and honest, like, do not do that.
Yeah.
Here's why. Um, but for the medical piece, like, is that a reason that I became a medic? I've always been drawn to medicine and helping people. And when my dad had a stroke, like my mom, she she put way too much responsibility on me as a young man to take care of my dad. And that's something that I like really resented about her actions like as I got older. Um so just to circle back on the question, like my the relationship with my dad. Is that a reason that I became a corpsman? Maybe subconsciously, maybe subconsciously, because I remember taking care of my dad in ways that no young man should be taking care of his father.
Usually, that's traditionally here in America, it's more of a woman's role or feminine role, and the other aspects to it, it actually made you more grittier because you had to lean into a role on that area, and you had to lean into not only your responsibility as a kid in school, trying to find your way, trying to be accepted by the people that's around you, where you said that a lot of the other neighborhood they kind of left you behind, and there was a lot of immigrants that moved into this area, and you were trying to figure out the new world around you. And then not only that, after you started to understand it, you decided to say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to become an alien to a bunch of podunk town and looking like some shady in a P Diddy jacket. God, P Diddy back in the day. Now P Diddy now is fucking crazy. But yeah, I it's just very interesting. And then also the blending. You said like you decided to go to the Navy and change, and then on top of it, you changed again where you're like, hey, I'm gonna go join the cult, probably one of the biggest cults in the world, the Marine Corps. You became a corpsman, and you earned the title Doc from us, which is a huge ego boost. And it's like if I would honestly safely assume between the Navy and the Marine Corps, they have a different type of feel of being called Doc.
Mm, yeah, man. Before I went to 1-3, I used to like dream about being called Doc. I used to like fantasize and like, man, it's gonna be so awesome. It's gonna be so cool. And I was right. I was dead on. Um, it was such. I mean, that's where I grew up as a man.
Hey, I know you're a very introspective person, so I'll ask this question. How do you feel to actually be seen by other men that are your peers and even your seniors that they relied on your expertise? Not only as just being back in the rear, but being in the field where we trust you. And I'll give the audience this perspective. So when I met Jared, we did this thing that was called combo, and I landed up actually needed to poop, and it was this medicine that was put onto the arm, and Jared can explain it if he wants, but he came into the bathroom to wipe it off, and I'm over here, I'm just like sitting on the toilet, and I'm like, huh, yeah, this guy already seen a lot of dicks in his life. What's one more? Not a big deal. And that's literally what went through my head, and I was like, it just felt comfortable. And where, in a lot of times, we prefer our privacy from other people. And so I'm just curious about your perspective of being seen as a man and actually as an equal or an individual that has this type of knowledge, subject matter expert.
Yeah, that doesn't happen right away in the Marine Corps. There's this transitional period where you're treated like a fucking idiot, dumb fuck, and they like fuck with you, and they see kind of what you're made of. And like the first few months I was there, I was in Hawaii, and we were getting ready to leave to go on a deployment. And I didn't really have a role. I was in headquarters and service company, just like I was fit, I could run, I could do all this shit, and I wanted to go and be with the line companies, but like, and just so happens that the scout sniper corpsman in the battalion had broke his wrist, so they needed a new scout sniper corpsman. And that job in an infantry battalion for a corpsman was like the top fucking job that you could have. You were like surrounded by professionals. Nobody really fucked with you because you were cool with the snipers. And I could tell the platoon that I was going to be at the BAS, and I could tell the BAS that I was going to be with the fucking platoon. And, and it was the best. And we got to Japan and I met my Marines, and like they didn't like me a lot at first. They were kind of cold. They were kind of distant. They were kind of, like, treating me like a boot. And they loved their old doc. So it was like, who's this fucking new guy coming to us? And man, those first 2 months in Japan were fucking hard. Like my platoon sergeant at the time, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, he did not fuck around. Everybody was tough. Like everybody was strong. Everybody was hardened, and um, it showed. You know, I remember the first time that I ever almost fell out on a run. There was a pistol range, probably 2 miles away. Maybe I'm exaggerating, mile and a half plus, and everybody else, they were taking trucks, and my staff sergeant was like, "We're gonna run." So like full gear, fucking Okinawa, Japan, with our pistols and all that shit. We run to the fucking range, shoot the range all day, and then run to the chow hall for lunch. And I remember running, and I'm looking at this dude's butt pack kind of bouncing in front of me, and like we're running, and like everything starts doing this. And I'm like, oh shit, man. And my buddy behind me was like, get your ass up there, Doc. And I think it was like one of the first times that they called me Doc, like my platoon called me Doc. And I like took a deep breath and pulled it together and got to the fucking chow hall, dropped my gear. I was like fuck it. Everybody went inside to like go fucking eat, and I was like, I'll stay out here and watch the gear. They're like, okay. So they go inside. I'm like, ugh, like throwing up. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, fuck this. Anyway, so like they grab me a bag nasty and they come out and we're talking. And slowly they stopped fucking with me, and as I trained more and as I became a peer to them, like stroked my ego, of course. And I was the sniper doc, and that was my nickname, Sniper Doc. And I lived every piece of that fucking life that you could imagine. I loved it. But being recognized for your work by a group of like-minded individuals is important as a man. And I think that's why the military can be so powerful. I think that's why the military can be so traumatic for some individuals too, because you got dirty pieces of shit that don't know how to lead people, and they think by leading people it means you just shit all over people.
Mm.
And the thing is, especially with this generation, and I'm sick of this. I'm tired of hearing about it. Like I heard it the last 3 years I was in about this next generation of soldiers, this next generation of sailors. They got a problem. No, they don't. You got a fucking problem. Your problem is your inability to lead. Your problem is your inability to connect with individuals on a personal level and figure out what makes them tick. It's not their problem, it's your problem. And it's a shortfall in your leadership, it's a shortfall in your system in the military.
It's the
And
approach.
yeah.
It's the approach.
And
It's the approach on it. It's like, how do you and like going off what you say to connect, how do you motivate that dude to actually continue to rise up? And when he's starting to suck wind, like you just said before, hey Doc, you just all of a sudden boom. But go on. I apologize for cutting you off.
No, no, get up there, doc. And compliments, right? Like I come from a military where you don't get fucking a compliment unless you earn it. I lived that life. I remember there was an individual that used to work for me. He has been out to the ridge, and while he was here, he told me he's like I waited for a year for that first compliment from you, and he's like, and I'll never forget when you gave it to me, and I was like, good, you probably fucking didn't deserve it anyway, but I was trying to boost your morale. but you know, there's something to be said for that about allowing someone into the space of that kind of like, this is our team, you're here now, I'm going to empower you, and while I'm empowering you, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. While I'm empowering you, I'm not going to be the nicest. I'm going to build you up into what I need you to be, not just for me, but for your other teammates and for the mission of the United States Navy, wherever you are. And if you can manipulate somebody into always trying to be the best, that becomes a powerful tool. Some people would call that leadership, but the same type of leadership doesn't work on everybody. You're not a leader. You're not a leader to just the people that fall under your umbrella. You're a leader in the Navy. And I am training you not to be the best at your job right now. I'm training you so when you leave here, you are trainable, well rounded, you're able to step into somewhere and lead, you're fit, and you're a fucking dog. You can be put anywhere and fucking get shit done. And if you don't know how to do it, you'll figure it out. That's what I'm training you to do and be, because that's what the Navy needs. Um, I feel like I got off track for a second.
Nah, you were just talking about the leadership qualities, the way that you wanted to actually see the world, and the way that you kind of need it in a way. And maybe I'm just go back to childhood when I heard a little bit. It's like you're showing up for these guys the way that you kind of needed the guidance when you were a kid. You stepped into that role as a man because think about how many young guys are 18, 17, 19 years old, even women that walk into these roles and say, hey, I'm here, but I have no idea what to do. If you just start barking orders at them and all of a sudden, like, oh, these screw like these fuck games, it doesn't really connect with them. And then if you are motivating them and you're able to teach them that now your immortality complex continue going on further, you're being able to make sure that these people come home. Because I remember when I was leaving my second unit, and I was training them how to use a Blue Force tracker, the Brick 119, how to use CYZ10, how to use all this like calm stuff. And I'm like, I want you guys to come home and not in a body bag. I want you guys to learn this stuff so when I leave, I gave you everything that I could. Because the way I look at it, and maybe it's the same way that you feel about it, we might be with them for a short time, but leaving an impression that stays with them for a lifetime is huge. And I had a buddy of mine, Staff Sergeant Suskin, really awesome dude. He pinned me on corporal in a house that was blown up in Fallujah, and he I remember one of the things he said to me, and we came back to the rear, like came back to like a fob, and I said to him, and I was so happy. And this was like April, not April. It was like August 7th, August 8th, somewhere around there. And I said, "Hey, Staff Sergeant, how does it be a corporal? How does it be an NCO?" And he says, "It's fucking early. I haven't had my cup of coffee yet." And he just, and then all of a sudden later on, he comes back and he's telling me, he's like, you be real, you be your honest self. You, if you see something you like, you emulate it. If you see something you don't like, you don't emulate it. He was like, and it was one of the best leaders I've ever come across in my life. And as a young guy, I was like 21 at this time. Being a Marine, it's kind of hard to even say, hey, to another man that you're looking up to, how do you do this? How do you actually have this type of conversation? And I was granted that same gift. I was in this place was called Cop North, and I was actually counseling a veteran, not a veteran, he was a Marine at the time, and he was asking me how to be a corporal was. And the way I was doing it was probably not the best way. I was in a shitter trailer, and my LT was next to me, and I didn't know my LT was next to me when I was actually giving this guy an NCO brief. But this guy wanted the information real quick, and I probably should have just waited and paused. But you know how you just try to think about being super productive, but it's one of the biggest gifts to give to other people of how to be an NCO, how to be a leader.
Absolutely. And growing, right? Realizing that some of the things that we did weren't the best avenues of leadership. Like, if you can, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines, I learned small unit leadership, which is, there is nothing that compares in the United States military to small unit leadership than the infantry battalion in the United States Marine Corps. Small unit leadership is the bedrock of that wildly functioning unit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I went to IDC school after that. When I graduated, I went to a ship for 3 years in Japan. I was the only corpsman on that ship for 3 years. And there, my small unit leadership, while valuable, was not embraced the same way that it would be in an infantry battalion, but I was okay with that. Um, I learned what not to do on that ship. There were some real sneaky, disgusting pieces of shit on that ship, um, that I was really able to feel that I don't want to be anything like that person. Um, and slowly my leadership style began to morph and change. And then I screened and was selected for Dev Group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. And there I was able to work closely with the Tier 1 Navy SEAL community and observe how they led, and take tools from an array of wildly talented, arguably some of the most talented leaders in the military arsenal, um, and make some big mistakes there and have my feet held in the fucking fire and slapped in the face a few times, you know, and been like, wow, lesson learned. Thank you very much. Um, and then I was able to go to a clinic, and I was once I left there, I went to San Antonio and I ran a clinic for 4.5 years, um, where I was the senior enlisted leader for about 40 sailors. And that's when I was able to put all the tools that I had acquired in my repertoire to use. And that was the best, that was the best job that I had in the Navy. All the cool, sexy stuff that I did, yeah, that's cool. But being able to come in, day out, develop these young corpsmen, really treat the sick and injured, um, that was the best. And I was able to put all these tools, all this wisdom, all these experiences into daily use. Authenticity will always shine through. Being yourself, like that staff sergeant told you, always shines through.
Mm.
People, you can fake a lot. You can be a, and this isn't just congruent to the United States military. Yoga teachers, medicine facilitators, fucking car dealers, like no matter what realm you go to, you can fake a lot of shit, but you can't fake authenticity. You can't fake it. You can't. You can't fake that vibration.
Mm.
And people feel it. And I think that bleeds really well into the work that we do here. You know,
So,
being able to communicate like, hey, we're gonna come here and we're gonna put some, frog secretion on our skin that's gonna make us throw up and poop, and it's gonna clean and cleanse your body and spirit, and then we're gonna go outside and lift each other up and carry each other and put our feet in the grass and put our hand on one another and look into each other's eyes. People are like, what the fuck? I'm not doing none of this, but they trust me and they know I'm not going to hurt them, and they feel my vibration. Like that exercise that we did at that retreat, that's the first time that I've ever done that. But I felt it. I felt spirit say, "Let's try this." And I said, "Okay." And I think I said to everybody, "Hey, this is the first time that I'm ever doing this, but like let's do it." And everybody did it, and it was powerful. Powerful, powerful offering within that retreat that literally came to me during the retreat. You know,
that retreat,
authenticity.
that retreat was actually really spot on. The way that everything to the lead up to even leaving the retreat, the trust that you were actually helping create, you were looking at the time, you were doing the faces, a little bit of getting to know each other, because you're going into a place where, at least for me, the way my brain works, you're going into a place that you're very vulnerable. And you have to be able to trust people while you're going into that vulnerable place. Because if your brain is really shutting down and is trying to control it, you're not really able to get into the subconscious, the area that we were really trying to dive into. So much of the self love, so much of the understanding, so much of what we were searching, and we're doing that with a group of people. A lot of us didn't know each other. Some people knew each other from past events, but at the same time, as a person walking into this area, not really even knowing you up to that point, I had to trust you. I had to trust the space. I had to trust the other people around me. And you did a great job of putting his hands on the shoulders. And I remember looking into Sean's eyes and I started tearing up when I was like, wow. And the compassion, the brotherhood. People were like, hey, I got you. It doesn't matter. And you did an excellent job creating that vulnerable atmosphere.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like that's one of my gifts is using my intuition and spirit to guide me and be able to be tuned in to listen to spirit and to listen to my vibration on what would be the highest service to the collective, to the container. And that comes from being vulnerable myself to using my intuition with pairing people up for the active listening exercise, um, to saying what needs to be said in the moment to unlock someone. And that is the key to the success of these containers. That is the key. the key is to take individuals from all walks of life. I don't care if they're in the military or if they work at Best Buy. You take people from all walks of life and you kind of get them vulnerable. You kind of shake them up a little bit, whittle them down until they're a little bit raw. You connect them with somebody into the container where they can be empathetically witnessed. Learning how to empathetically witness another man, learning how to not be a fixer,
Hmm.
learning how to be a space holder is the bedrock of these containers. And when you're able to feel it, know it, absorb it, it flows. And it's a it's a crescendo of trust and love that happens. And I feel it during the container, you know. And it's natural and it happens. And I think that's one of my gifts.
What got you into this medicine space?
Um so I took quite a bit of hallucinogens growing up. I remember one time I ate acid and went to like Saturday school. And I was like just sitting in Saturday school on acid, like drawing and doodling and like writing poems and like all this shit. And so I knew the mind opening capacities of these substances since I was young, like sixth, seventh grade. I was taking hallucinogens and smoking copious amounts of cannabis. And joined the Navy, all that stopped. And a handful of traumatic events and my childhood stuff really starting to bubble up over time. And there was a point when I was on the SSRIs, I was on the pain medication, I was on something to help you sleep, something to help you wake up, something to help you this. And I was on a bunch of medications and man, I just wasn't well. And towards the end of my career, I was positioning myself to open a hospice home. I bought a large farmhouse in South Texas. Then I was going to flip. Um, got in way over my head. This really big, beautiful farmhouse. It's a complete gut, and I bought it, and I was doing all the work on it, and I'm going to turn it into a hospice home, and that was going to be my retirement plan. Felt good. It felt aligned, and I started to navigate this plan to become a hospice home administrator. And what I found was being a death doula was calling to me. A death doula is someone that can hold space for the dying and help them take their last breath and transition into their next existence in this realm. And plant medicine really started to call to me, particularly mushrooms. So I started to like explore mushrooms a little bit more as I was coming off of my medication. And one night I had a wildly prolific, it was the first time that I ever took a really large dose of mushrooms. And I had a wildly prolific experience that just changed me forever. And I was never the same. I felt like I had this Kundalini esque energy awakening that um, was unlocked in my root chakra that kind of blasted up my spine. And without going too much into the details of what was happening, but I was out in the middle of this field, like 10, 11 o'clock at night, just moving and chanting and singing and like slapping myself and like just really activating my body. And couple other wild things happened, and I came back into the house, and I started the Death Doula Academy that night. I put these big headphones on and did this like death meditation while on a large dose of mushrooms. And the death meditation is like you're going to die, and it like walks you through your last 30 days, and then you die and you arrive to the next existence. And like some of the people that I saw were like people that I'd killed, or people that I had like helped facilitate to kill. And I smelled them. I could smell them, and like I hugged them, and like, dude, all this pain and all this anger and all this everything kind of came off of my heart. And I just was sitting there. At the end, I took my headphones off. This big spooky fucking house at like 2 in the morning, and fucking just like cried. And I was like, holy fuck, man. And over the next 6 8 months, I was eating a lot of mushrooms. I'd go drop my kids off at school, daycare, and I'd shoot down there. And I was probably eating 2 3 grams of mushrooms for 3 4 days at a time, like back to back every day. And I would paint, and I would just take care of the house on mushrooms, and I'd sing and I'd dance and I'd play guitar and play drums, and just like let my prefrontal cortex and let my brain just like sizzle on this beautiful medicine. And couple times I took large doses of medicine at night, and like I just felt so much love and connection to nature, and spirit was kind of nudging me like with visuals, like this is how you heal your community. This is how you heal. And I was like, with the mushrooms? And they're like, yes. Like, and I kept having these visions of like people together sharing doses of mushrooms, like experiences, and like coming together and crying, and like all like kept on like having these downloads of like what this looks like. And I was like, I don't know what all this means, because I was still going to open that hospice house. And then finally, like after stretching myself with this medicine, and like it all just kind of clicked, and spirit was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you're in no rush, but continue to work on yourself, continue to fill your own cup so you can be of service to your peers and people of this existence on this earth. And that's exactly what I did. I shifted everything. I told my wife, Lindy, I was like, let's sell this house, and then let's look for a house somewhere in the United States that has a concrete fortified structure, ponds, at least 40 acres, like on top of a hill, like all these things, right? And we started to like write down and manifest this stuff. We were looking at houses all over Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, everywhere. And Tulsa, Oklahoma had everything that I wanted, minus the spring fed ponds. We got a couple ponds, but they're not spring fed, and I was okay with that. Um, but we executed, and my wife was on board. And I said, and then the Ridge property, which I'm at now, I've always journaled since 2016 that I wanted to do something where we could have our own piece of property, where we could do retreats, yoga, sound healing, music therapy, art therapy, jujitsu, um, connection to nature, all these things that we do. But what I didn't know was that plant medicine was going to be a piece of that too. And seriously, it's just spirit. and manifestation and creation, and trying to keep my vibration high to allow manifestation and creation to come to fruition,
Hmm.
execution, and allowing it to blossom and bloom and nurturing it along the way without controlling. And I sold that house and I started to manifest, like, before this property was even for sale. I was writing like, I'm going to sell that south house for $550,000. I'm going to purchase this house, on this property for this much. And I just was like, boom, 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 boom. And I told my realtor, when this property goes for sale, let me know.
Hmm.
And he's like, it's not even for sale yet. I'm like, it's like, why do you think it's going to be for sale? I'm like, I just know. About 6 weeks, 2 months later, he's like, hey, that property just hit the market. How'd you know? They're asking double what you want to pay, though. I'm like, it'll happen. So like this dance went on. He's lowered the price, and I'm keeping an eye on it, and people are looking at it, and I just was not worried. I'm like, this property is gonna be mine. I'm trying to sell this fucking house in Texas, and there's like problems, and people are fucking trying to lowball me. I'm like, nope, this is what the deal is. I shot down to Mexico to smoke 5-MeO DMT as a retreat, and when I knew when this property was like mine. And like all within the same couple weeks, it was like, hey, you got an offer on the South House in Texas for this much. Exactly what I wanted. Hey, he's at this price range. I was like, I'm going to offer him this. And sure as shit, dude, we started to move and it just started to happen. Um, and before that, like, I did my first retreat at my house. Lots of lessons learned, from the food to the preparation to the integration to the everything. And but people still had prolific experiences that really helped them change their life. And I was like, this is it. So I think I've taken 3 or 4 facilitation courses, just so, like, and not even courses from individuals that I vibrate with, but like taking bites from all walks on how people do this work and then making it my own, you know? But all of that to say, like, it wasn't my decision to be like, this is what I'm going to do. It was spirit being like, if you truly want to be of highest service to your peers who are suffering from completing suicide, then you're going to have to stand in your power. You're going to have to buck this system that you've been a part of for over 20 years. And you're going to have to lose some friends. If you want to do this work, like, it's going to be messy. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we've been doing it.
So when I'm actually was listening, you were talking about the death doula and asking and learning how to die and what the next 30 days were. And then based off of my own healing of actually doing different mental health processes and thinking about what you were doing with like your medicine that you're able to help distribute, you're asking some people to die in their own logic, not physically, but actually to mentally allow themselves to let go of their behaviors, their patterns, to help them die.
100%.
And rebuilding a house, and you could say you're doing quite a bit of mushrooms and how it actually helped you heal. But you were allowing yourself to explore an empty vessel, something that you were stripping down very metaphorically, to be able to look at it from a different angle. I'm curious, how did you start healing? And I know that you were on medicine. I know a little bit about your story, just a hair. But what was the big changing point in your life when you say, you know, I need to actually do a gut check of my own mental health.
Oh shit. Um, I guess like I mean, I was in therapy forever. Like getting back from Afghanistan and like my friend John Fralish got killed. And I was like not well before I left. And then I came back and I just was like not well. And I kicked that can down the road forever. For 10 plus years, I just kind of limped through and lied and like, oh, I'm fine, and drinking my ass off and knocking people out at bars and getting my nose broken at bars and, you know, being a womanizer and just, doing all these things to stroke my ego to try to make me feel safe. But I knew this underlying current was sweeping me out slowly. And then in 2016, it was a really hard year for me for multiple reasons. But um, when I got to Texas and I was like, all right, I'm really going to try to do what the doctors say now. So I went on the meds and I did all this stuff. And man, like one day, my son was recently born and they tried to send me on a deployment to Iraq for a year. And this is on shore duty. And I knew when I met my son, I was like, I'm never deploying again. I'm never leaving him. Like, I know. So they tried to send me to Iraq, man. And I was like, I'm just going to be honest on this overseas screening. So I was completely honest about everything. And they sent me down to Corpus Christi, Texas, where my parent command was to be screened. And then they said, yeah, unqualified. And that fucked me up, man. And I drove back up in the morning and I was drinking at a bar by 10:30, like taking pain pills and taking benzos. And by lunchtime I was in my truck with a pistol in my hand, like crying on my cig, like getting ready to kill myself. And like my LPO called me. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Man, I'm fucking not well, dude. Like I'm at the Flying Saucer right now, drinking tall IPAs, fucking taking Xanax and pain pills, and with a loaded fucking pistol in my lap. Like, not the recipe for healing." So he came and kind of pulled me out of that hole, and there were a few other holes that I slipped in, and I don't really remember what it was that like allowed me to throw my hand up in the air and say, you know what, fuck all this. But I will say that combo was a huge shift in my vibration and what I needed to heal. Um, the mushrooms helped me do a lot of work. The mushrooms allowed me to like see things, feel things. But the first few times I did combo, it was like rinsing out a bar rag, and I felt so much healthier and I was able to step away from booze. I got off of my medications and I was like, that's it. That's where we need to be going. We need to get veterans away from medications under while talking to their physicians, um, and step away from booze. And if we can do those two things and be supportive throughout their journey, like we can make a huge dent in veteran suicide. But that was, and it didn't happen all at once. It was like this and that and these different modalities and breakthroughs and setbacks and breakthroughs and this and that, and I still have breakthroughs and I still have setbacks, you know. Um, it's still a process. You never arrive in the healing space. You never arrive as you're done, you know? Like this is an ongoing project forever.
It's the discipline, it's the habits, it's the patterns that you're creating. Like you talked about, and there was a few things that was playing through my head when I heard, "Hey, I met my son. I'm not deploying anymore." The question I was like, is he just because he wants to make sure that his son always knows his father? Because when you play in that realm, you never know if you're gonna come home. And I lost a buddy over there. I actually lost a couple, and it's interesting that you know how fragile life is. And then on the flip side, hey, yeah, I'm going to be honest. Now you got labels. Now you can't be with your boys anymore. You can't actually be that person that is like, hey, I'm here for you. I'm showing up for you.
You're broken. You're useless. You're no longer a part of this team.
Yep. And you stripped away from your identity because it's like a lot of times people don't realize, like, they'll say, oh, when you break up with your wife or your partner, all of a sudden you lost your other half. You lost the people that understood. And I only did 4 years in the Corps, and what was interesting, even leaving the guys I served with my first tour and going to a different unit, it was just like very interesting because I didn't have the same predictability level, and now your boys don't have the same predictability level. Now you're also not being able to be there, and what's another fact of like what I do for work at the VA, there's a bunch of people that have more issues with the survivor guilt or the moral injury. But the ones that we don't really look at is the individuals that have been pulled from the game or never had a chance to actually play in the big game or what they want to call
Yeah,
it.
100%.
And like you're talking about healing, that shit is like it's like a Jackson Pollock. It's just like it's all over the place. And you think that you're healed over here, then all of a sudden, whack a mole, the thing pops up over here. Then you're like, oh, I got this one, I got this one. Then the thing's over here. And you're not even realizing what it is. It could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be just like an auditory hallucination that comes back to you real quick without even actually a visual hallucination before it comes to you real quick. And then all of a sudden, you're just like back in there. And I talk about this sometimes on here, but also with people I work with. I come across a pothole, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Yo, thank you, Will. You got my back right now," and I appreciate it. And I have to self-soothe the thing that has actually kept me alive. And we don't always actually talk about how we have different fragments of our life that is bleeding through, trying to come losing like talk about losing buddies to suicide, and then also losing buddies overseas. The reason I wanted to start this podcast, very similar to what you were saying, it's not something I wanted to do. It's because I lost a buddy named Vlad to suicide. I just lost a buddy Kuhn to suicide. I lost other people to suicide. And some of the people that I've actually met, they're not well either. They just drink themselves into a stupor. They make themselves feel like this wet blanket around them that makes them feel safe, but it's actually the thing that's dragging them down.
100%. And that is shadow work, right? Like how we've been conditioned to make ourselves feel safe. And when that conditioning no longer serves us, because it's interfering in our relationships, it's interfering in our lives, it's interfering in our jobs, that is what that work is.
Mm,
And being able to acknowledge, like, who I was in the military and how I thought and how I behaved and how I was cold and unempathetic and sick, it served me in that time of my life, unfortunately. But fortunately,
mm,
now, as a 42-year-old man with 2 kids and a loving wife, I don't need to be those things anymore. I need to have empathy. I need to have patience. I need to operate in a gray zone. I need to love myself. If I want to be a good husband, a good father, a good facilitator, a good friend, I don't need to be Senior Chief Napier anymore. I can release that identity. I can release that ego that made me feel so safe, seen, and powerful. Nothing is more addicting than behavior that makes you feel safe.
mm.
Nothing is more addictive and troublesome than behavior that has been conditioned upon us to feel safe, seen, and valued. And I don't care if it's booze, if it's women, but those things that quell feelings of inadequacy, feelings of being unsafe, not seen, not valued, mm, so important.
What was the thing? What was the thing that kept you safe? But as soon as you let it go, you realized it was one of your biggest anchors.
Control, control, ego, um, needing to be right, needing to have it be done my way, um, trusting but deeply verifying. Um, and that stems from feeling adequate, and these layers of complexity when it comes to women and my biological mother not being able to be nurtured from her when I was young, and all these things that affect us. Um, they come out in behavior. They come out in subconscious behavior. And a lot of my problems stemmed from feeling inadequate. So once I could step into my power and realize that these patterns of behavior are coming from my subconscious, I could really shift the perspective
Mm,
and find gratitude for all the things in my life because they have truly made me who I am today. And I am incredibly proud of who I am as a man. I'm not proud of everything that I've done as a man, but I am proud of who I have become through it all and showing gratitude for every sliver of my path
mm,
from, being sexually abused you know, as a young teen to my friends dying, to having my heart broken, to fucking things up, you know, uh, all these things that have compiled over time to allow me to hit rock bottom and tunnel my way out while looking at all those things and feeling all those things and why I behave that way and the root cause of my suffering
mm.
on why I felt I need to behave that way. Like that is the quote unquote work.
How was it?
I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, you did. You actually were able to extrapolate how where the control was rooted from. You were able to give insight to people listening, even myself, understanding about why was it safe? Why did you need that control? It's the barriers of your mother not being able to be there, your unfortunate situation that happened when you were a teen, there being a corpsman, being just you. Like, these are the areas that you had to rely on yourself. You had to rely on yourself to take care of your dad. You had to rely on yourself to pull yourself up. You had to rely on yourself on a multitude of areas. And shit, control? Like, if I can be able to have a predictable outcome, I won't be molested again. I'm not going to get into a fight. If I let go of, like, how a person sees me, is my wife going to abandon me like my mom did? Am I going to push them away so that I can have this safe reaction because all the people leave me? If Yeah, there's a lot to it where, and then all of a sudden now we got a person that says, "Hey, I love you. I'm gonna be a ride or die with you," and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, my mom was supposed to be like that," or even losing a buddy. You're like, "Oh, you were supposed to be there to the end. You fucking up and left me, even though I wasn't their choice." So I could definitely get what you said when you mentioned control. Did you answer my question? I definitely think you did.
Thanks. Yeah.
You mentioned Lindy a couple times. How did she help you out with your healing?
Shit. um, she has been with me through it all. You know, her not able to speak her truth all the time because she's afraid that I'm gonna kill myself and be sick and sad and fall off the deep end. Um and radically supportive, even when I wasn't the best to her, you know, even when I wasn't the best husband or the best father. She was radically supportive. And when we got this house down in South Texas and I started to do mushrooms a lot, and she was like super skeptical. She was like, "Look, like, no, like, I don't want you doing all this." And kind of told her, like, "This is what I'm going to do." And I started to do it. And then I had a couple like really transformational experiences where I was able to come in contact with like extraterrestrial energy and like feel all these feel all these different realms of energy and really open up my heart galactically. And I was like trying to explain it to her, and she's just like trusting me, like, okay, like, but then she started slowly seeing the change in me. And when I came off my meds and I dropped like 20 pounds and like I was kinder, I was more vibrant. I stepped away from alcohol. I was eating cleaner. I was exercising. I wasn't, and she's just like, wow, there's really something to this. She's always been radically supportive, and she's super smart and she's super grounded. She's in her logical mind a lot. I don't operate in my logical mind, as you can probably see working with me. I move by spirit. I move by how I feel. I move by what I feel God's telling me and what's nudging me towards things. That's how I roll. You can roll like that, but you need a strong, logical person with you. And that's what she's always been for me. And we balance each other very well. You know.
When I met her, beautiful soul, you could just tell that she's kind. Even from when you guys talked about the weed, she's like, "I don't like it, but I understand." And she's just super supportive of you. And It's interesting when I watch you two together, like how much physical touch is between you guys. It's a physical touch in a very healthy way. The hand on the shoulder or the hand around the back. The interesting thing that I observed about you is when Leaf ran into, I think it was like, I think he ran into the net and then he fell down. And you waited. You gave him the opportunity to be able to process what happened. And then you were like, hey, you good? And it was like that father figure that most men needed, where it was just like, I got you. Are you good by yourself? And she sees that within you and the way that you two are able to bounce off of each other. It was uh it was very warming to watch you two in your atmosphere. And even though you were playing host to us for like up until really Sunday morning, and then it was just you took the veil off of yourselves and you're able to be just you two and able to spend time with you and your family, and it was just really cool watching the interaction.
Thanks for saying that. I'd be lying if I said I always wanted her here at retreats at first. You know, she started to, through my healing and my path, she found her own spiritual path. Um, and she got her Reiki certification, and she took a year-long course with energy and with how to, just this beautiful spiritual course. And she would come in and be in the container and help open the space and just introduce herself and this and that. And it was immediately when she did, she would be here for a little bit and then go hang out with the kids and then come back. And some of the immediate feedback that we would get on our after action critiques, is like, it was amazing watching you and Lindy work together. Lindy brings a beautiful aspect to this. And like a lot of the feedback was like, hey, Lindy's great. She should be here more. So I was like, okay. So we started to do that more. And again, she's very logical, and she she wants and needs everything to be perfect, right? That's like how she operates. I don't operate like that. So like pre-retreat, she's known to like P's, Q's, crossing T's, dotting I's, locking my ass down. Like, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. And I'm like, look, I ain't trying to hear all that shit. Like, I need to get into a space where spirit can communicate with me. Like I need to fill my cup so much before a retreat. So I am like topped off, and when I spill, I'm spilling goodness, you know, I'm pouring from a full cup. Slowly, that relationship with her trusting me, me knowing that, she is right about a lot of these things, and kind of meeting in the middle, and her relinquishing some of uh that control, right, to me, and me forward communicating to her to quell some of that angst,
Mm-hmm.
you know um but she is such a grounded, powerful, magical human being that um loves this work and loves the people and loves me, and we continue to do this work together.
The thing I didn't share with you guys, and I was only thinking about while we were talking, and this is something, a little bit of feedback, and this is actually based off of other conversations I've had with people about healing, especially with men. We do need that masculine and feminine energy in there. If we want to get better, we can't do it in a silo. And having that feminine energy when men are healing and having that strong masculine energy while I was healing, it's like a nice, beautiful cocktail of energy. And watching, or actually watching how you guys were interacting during the ceremony and how it was just a gentleness touch. Like if you touched my arm the way that your wife touched my arm, I would be like, his hands are pretty soft. I don't know if I actually, but it was just the kindness when you needed it. You also had the strength when you needed it. And that's kind of when I look at masculinity and I think about men's health. Like Carl Jung talks about the anima, having the feminine energy inside the masculine. When I think about the military, especially the Marine Corps, we're a lot of times we're going in there trying to find male role models, and we're trying to find people, and then we have this hyper toxic masculinity because a lot of times it's been heavily distorted and it's been years of perversion of saying this is how men act, and having that having that leader or having that person that's in that space with you saying, "Hey, dude, it's okay. You fucked up. Great. Let's do a shit sandwich for you. You're doing excellent here. You screwed up here, and this is the things I see that you're growing." And having that type of energy where it's like, "Hey, we can let our hair down. We can let go of that control. We don't need to be this thing, this aura. We can actually just be a human." And I think that is like when I was actually there and I reflecting on it after a few months, actually after a couple months, that's like a piece of feedback I would give to you that it was just the blend. And the more that you see you two together in a healthy mindset, it's a subconscious or it's a subliminal message to other people that are like, hey, I can actually have a healthy relationship. It's okay to touch my wife besides just sex. It's okay to be able to kiss my wife without actually thinking I need more than that. I'm able to just be without needing it.
Yeah, man. It is so important, in my opinion, to have a balance of masculine, feminine energy in a healing space. And I don't care if it's a women's retreat or a men's retreat or whatever. Being so, the first time that I ever did a retreat, it was a men's retreat at my house. And I kind of intuitively brought in two of my friends that I graduated my Death Doula Academy with, and both women. So I think we had like 5 or 6 men and 2 women and me. And I just intuitively invited them. I didn't know why. But when we got into that space, it was apparent on why they were there. Being empathetically witnessed by a woman as a man, being vulnerable, not just heals the man, but it also unlocks aspects of the women as well. And that is truly how we raise the vibration of the collective. Um, at the men's retreat, um, you were at the veterans retreat, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Which was kind of like a men's retreat. There were no women in that container. Um, but having women that are there to witness and to hold that space isn't just healing for the men, but it's also healing for the women. Same in a women's space. We held a women's retreat couple weeks after the veterans retreat. And what I found was, and a lot of the feedback that we received was having me in that space as a grounded, safe, masculine man um, really unlocked a lot of healing for the women. So there is this duality between these energies that I feel is so important in this work. You know, the ability to be seen, be witnessed by a woman as a man, and for women to feel safe, be seen, be witnessed with a man is incredible, incredibly impactful, and it shifts people at a cellular level.
Hmm. The witnessing is huge. Being vulnerable, taking the mask off, being us. And the question I have for you about being a male, like I compliment you on your voice and also your stash. How does it feel when you're in a woman's space, but you're, I'm not saying you have the that negative energy, but actually a person has been vulnerable or have actually have had their areas betrayed by men, and then being allowed to be accepted, but also being able to break through that ambivalence phase.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, there's no highest honor. Um, I was looking to bring other men into into that women's container. Maybe just one more male space holder, but nobody felt completely right. And when we did, uh, when I was in that space, I wasn't sure how I was going to move. I wasn't sure if I was going to feel like restricted or if I was going to be apprehensive on the things that I would say, if that vibration of my apprehension and not feeling totally in my power was going to, interrupt spirit communicating to me on what to do. And really it was the opposite. It was spirit moved through me and I was doing things that I never do in ceremony. I rarely touch people during ceremony. Like I let the other facilitators go. Like if I feel called, I'll go over and like hold somebody's hand or I'll kneel next to them and take a deep breath, but I don't really do that a lot. But with the women's retreat, like I was lightly adjusting blankets and like fluffing pillows, and I went back to the ridge and like washed a bunch of blackberries and got coconut waters and like went in there, and like was just doing this like really nurturing things that I don't ever do in ceremony. And I like picked up my harmonica and like started playing music and like doing all these things that I never really do. Um and it like I felt like I unlocked a new level of being a facilitator. It was like I feel like as a facilitator, I need to be rigid in certain ways, but that showed me that I can be trusting and allow spirit to come through me, even though I might have some like predetermined apprehension about that. And it was so powerful. Some of the kindest things that have ever been said to me were by women after that retreat.
Hmm.
And yeah, that always makes me cry anytime that I can make women feel safe, seen, and valued. Because there have been times in my life where I haven't been that person for women. And trying to sleep with women or doing whatever that I was doing to gain the trust of women, really.
It was the satisfying this urge, the itch, the need to be seen, the
Mm.
release, the it was the ability just to, and you didn't care. I'm not saying you, and I know it firsthand from myself. When I was younger, that's what I would do. I was a womanizer, and I thought that's all it was just like, well, hell, this is what relationships are. I saw it on porno, so it has to be true. It was on the internet. Or the fact that you joined the Marine Corps and this is something. Or growing up in the lower socioeconomic, how to be a man, this is what it is. And then all of a sudden you like have to abandon that belief system and be like, no, this is a human. I want to get to know them. I want to be able to get to nurture them. I want to get a chance to hold space and treat them how they should be treated and actually how I would like to be seen instead of just a vessel just trying to get a nut. So I appreciate that rawness right there. It's an area that I feel like sometimes we forget that hey, this was part of us, and being able to identify the false beliefs to allow in the new belief system to come in. So shout out to Rising Ridge, and I wanted to ask you, Jerod, what was the why did you want to come onto the podcast? And what was also the message that you would like to give to people that are struggling or are in mental health recovery?
I wanted to come on the podcast because um, I I I like you, Will. I I I think you're intelligent, and I like the way you think. I like the way you communicate. I liked how you're grounded, and I like that. I like the work you're doing. And I would be honored to come onto a platform like this and answer questions and talk to you. Um, and if I could just say anything to anybody that is possibly on a healing journey, or maybe they're sick, it would be this. Um, Change doesn't come from being comfortable. Change comes from realizing that where you are is from your own vibrations and you are not a victim. Being able to connect those dots and take radical ownership and responsibility for where you are is a cornerstone in healing. The things that have happened to you in your past do not define who you are. The ability to make change comes from getting out of your comfort zone. Find like minded individuals that you can be vulnerable with. Put the alcohol down. Think about where you want to be in the next 3 months of your life, the next 6 months of your life, the next year of your life. If you're on medications and you want to stay on them, that's your decision. I would encourage anybody to talk to their doctors about their medication profile and begin to come off of these mind altering, body chemical altering medications that can truly be more harmful than they are good sometimes. Connect yourself to nature because you are nature. You're not observing nature, you're not observing trees or birds or dogs. You are one amongst this planet and realm. The only way out is through. During a transition, you're going to feel lonely. you're going to feel crazy. You're going to lose people in your life that have been there for a long time. The earlier that you can identify the people that are not supportive to you in your change and healing and create distance between them will be more beneficial than trying to keep them around. The ability to vibrate in your authenticity comes from health, food, sleep, exercise, connection to nature, connection to people that truly value you and see you. And if you are not well and suicide is possibly on the table, you need to have a plan that can be executed for when you're not well. You need to have no shit 4 or 5 people that you can call that know how to hold space for you. There were times when I was suicidal and I would scroll through my phone and there was nobody that I could call because what I would be met with is, what's wrong? What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. I don't know what's fucking wrong. I know that I'm not well and I'm sitting here crying at a fucking bar with a loaded fucking pistol in my pants. I don't know what's wrong. I know I'm not well. Know and understand that if you make the choice to change and to heal, that people's opinions of you have nothing to do with you. They have everything to do with themselves. It has everything to do with how they were conditioned, how they think, how they perceive. It's got nothing to do with you. If you start doing well and being more healthy and creating boundaries with people and learning how to say no, learning how to say yes, if people don't like that about you and they got shit to say, know in your heart it's got nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how they feel about themselves. I guess that's what I would say to anybody that is interested in healing.
You know, when you were actually talking and you said being drunk with a loaded pistol at a bar and having that person to call because you don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. The only addition I would say is being in that same spot but with a shotgun underneath my chin. I didn't know who to call because I didn't tell him, hey, I'm hurting. I didn't want to call him up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, I'm about to end my life. I didn't have that relationship with people, even though they said, hey, give me a call if you're struggling. Well,
Everybody says that.
but if you never actually do those dry runs, if you never actually say, hey, dude, I'm fucked up, how are you supposed to know if they're going to do that? And being rejected in that time of need, you know, at the cellular level, your body is saying, hey, I want to live. But if I get rejected one more time, it's over.
Yeah. I remember one time I wasn't well. I was really going through some stuff at work at Dev Group, and I called my buddy to talk, and it was met with sarcasm and jokes and nothing that I needed in my life. And I've never forgotten that. And it made me think about how many times have I been that to other men who have tried to confide in me. And I'm lucky enough now that people do call me when they're not well. And I have a handful of people. I have quite a few people now after developing these containers that I know I can call, and group chats that I can just text, I'm not well. And having that deep roster of good fucking people, men and women, that can hold that space for me and then maybe give a recommendation what to do is so, I'm so blessed for that. And I'm so blessed that people trust me to be that phone call. Although my phone's never on fucking, it's always on do not disturb. Paul Newbar says, the man's so nice, you gotta call him twice because my phone doesn't ring the first time you call. That's so important. How many men don't have that in their lives? How many men feel like they're going through it all alone and there's nobody that can possibly understand? I'm like, brother, you don't have to have something happen in your life for you to be suicidal. You can just be really sick, and that's okay. It's okay to be really sick and unregulated. And for anybody that says the words like, I don't know how anybody could ever kill themselves, like, it's just, I don't understand. Like, all right, man, well, thanks for sharing that. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, when you're in that space of being sick and suicidal, you're not thinking logically. There is no logic. All you know is that you, at a cellular level, feel that you would be better off dead.
Not even just you, but the people you care about. For some reason, you justify they would be better off without me. They would be better off if I was gone. I'm such a
Yeah.
burden. I'm so broken, the word that you use. And we throw around this phrase or this acronym PTSD, and then some people call it about PTS. But the area that we don't talk about enough is post traumatic growth. When
Mm.
when you come from a place where you have been so stressed out, your bandwidth has been totally destroyed. When you start growing, you realize how resilient you are. When you know how it is to have that cold piece of metal either in your waistband, underneath your chin, or you're looking at that edge of saying, "Hey, I'm about to say deuces." Whatever the modality that you want to end it, you start to look at that abyss. You start to understand that abyss. And when you start healing, you're not just thinking about that point. You're thinking about the days, the hours, the minutes that led you up there. What was the thinking? What was the toxicity? What was the point of your life that was missing? What was the information that you were downloading that was actually totally bringing you to that pit? You mentioned the shadow side. What was everything being filtered through? What was that that poison, that demonic way of thinking that was creating this narrative to say, yes, this person tells me they love me, but do they really? Second guessing everything. And then when you're able to allow yourself to be able to sit in that cesspool of thinking, you're like, well, you're there, bud. Let's go sit in there. It's all right. I'm very familiar with this cave. Let's go hang out for a bit. I got you. I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with it. Let me actually show you a little bit of a light. And you can sit with that person in that sorrow and that warmth coming off of you helps actually break away that loneliness, that iceberg that they've been sitting on for so long. And that love that they're able to be able to see and realize that the last years, the last days, the last months, I've been hurting. But doesn't mean that this is the end of my story. I could be the protagonist in my own story and I can have that change.
Mm. Yeah. 100%.
J-
Yeah.
Jared, I appreciate you, man, more than you know. It's been a blessing getting to know you, blessing getting to know your family. And I'm looking forward to having you on another time when I'm having a group panel talking about plant medicine and how it's actually been beneficial for people in recovery.
Mm. Absolutely. Will, thank you so much for everything that you are doing. Very inspiring. You know, you've inspired me to like do my podcast.
Nice.
Like I bought all this equipment probably a year and a half ago. Like I got all the shit. I just haven't done anything. But how you do it is from my optic, it's and how you described it is like fairly simple and it doesn't have to be all this stuff, you know. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan in a week. And I was like, you know what? I just want to get with Will and figure out how to do it. And then maybe I just start to do what you're doing because it's impactful.
To be
So thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you. It's kind of like that South House in Texas. You got a plan? Why don't we just do it full send? Oh shit. All of a sudden you learn, you evolve, you start changing, you have this self
Yeah.
narrative of what you think you want to do, and then you start hearing the feedback and you're like, whoa, I gotta pivot, I gotta pivot. And going to your retreat, it was actually I think you know him, CT. He was over in Texas. Yeah, he did the Ibogaine cocktail with the DMT and he never drank again after it. And I was like, been very interested in the psychedelic field after reading Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, or reading Aldous Huxley's book Doors of Perception, and also understanding that they've been doing this for quite some time of healing people that have had hopeless ways of thinking and giving people this
Mm,
type of brightness. So appreciate you letting me share some space with you, brother.
appreciate you. God bless you. You have a wonderful, outstanding Friday, brother. And let me know whenever you want me to come back on here with the panel. Blessings and love, brother.
Love